Ladies and gentlemen, I think I speak for everyone when I say, what the fuck did we just witness? I mean, seriously, John, we just witnessed a an 80 plus minute battle with a few interesting casualties, but not as many as I expected. And the battle for the dawn, the war for the dawn, the war of Winterfell, the battle of Winterfell, everything just fucking ended. It's over. Like it was an 80 plus minute battle, and by the end of the episode, it was wrapped up in a neat little bow, and that's just it, man. It's over. Next up, Cersei. Let's do this.
I mean, what a mid-season finale, right?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Um, I mean, dude, there's so much to say, and unlike you, like I'm not in a position to really like take notes and stuff like that. So I'm gonna be all scatterbrained. But one thing, because I know we normally just go scene by scene. One thing I just want to say very generally, this episode not only was intense as hell and rarely ever let up, and even in the scenes where it did quote unquote let up, like the battle was always constant. It was always a presence like in the episode. And as I was telling you before it went live, this episode was fucking gorgeous.
Yeah.
Like how it looked visually between like the fire and the hordes of people like clashing and the sets and everything, man, everything. This has got to be one of the most beautiful shows on television, I think, because I even told you I'd be very curious to know what the budget of this episode was because they went balls out, I feel like, and it paid off. It paid off. It was just breathtaking in the most horrifying way. And yo, Abel and Paul, welcome, guys. Welcome. Get comfortable. So yeah, this episode was fucking gorgeous, dude. Some amazing character moments, including one that made me actually tear up a little bit. I don't know if you got emotional at all during this episode. I did tear up during one point, which we'll talk about. But
No,
yeah,
I'm
man,
very curious to know which point got you. I'm guessing it was Theon.
well, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. But yeah, man, it was a very powerful episode to say the least. Is there any other preliminary remarks you want to make before we really unpack it scene by scene?
I don't think I really have anything as far as like broad stroke sweeping statements that I want to make, but I am ready to get into the episode. So let's start talking because obviously before the battle we do see some preparations being made. We see kind of almost like a kind of a smooth transition from one person to the next. It's Samwell, Bran, Sansa. We just kind of see a bunch of important people. Sandor even but pushes his way to the front of the lines, and we see Ghost kind of lined up near Jorah. John and Danny were standing up on a hilltop looking down on everything when Melisandre showed up, and she asked Jorah, "Do you speak their language?" And when he said yes, she asked him to have them all lift up their swords, and he did, and they did. And then she went over and said something in High Valyrian while touching, I forget his name, but the Khal of this particular Khalasar touched his blade, and it lit up, and it also lit up every single blade in that entire Khalasar on fire. So she comes in, immediately lights every single one of these blades on fire, which you're thinking like, awesome, this gives us an advantage. And then she says Valar Morghulis to Grey Worm, which is what Jaqen H'ghar made sure that Arya knew how to say in order to get, I believe, into Bravos. I think that's what it was. Um, and then obviously Grey Worm recognizes what she's saying and replies with Valar Dohaeris. And I don't remember what the other one means, but I know that Valar Morghulis means all men must die. I think Valar Dohaeris is like all men must serve, or it might be backwards. But then Davos makes the order to open the gate for Melisandre to be able to enter Winterfell, and she tells him, "Hey, no need to execute me. I'll be dead before dawn." So, well, then we get like a long distance stare between Melisandre and Arya because obviously Arya recognizes her from when she took Gendry back in season 3. And then, yeah, we see this entire massive Dothraki Khalasar charge into the night. Jon and Daenerys watching from above, flaming cannonballs getting shot out into the dark. And before we move on, I think that I'm going to just take a break from describing what happened in this episode to just talk about what's happened so far.
Yeah, man. I mean, in intense shit. You can already see again a lot of the relationship dynamics at play because we know Davos hates the freaking the Red Lady, the witch, because of what happened with Shireen. and things like that, because Shireen and Davos were incredibly close. So thankfully, she was able to talk her way out of it. And the exchange between like her and Arya, just that stare, that comes into play later because they meet up, and that was a very interesting scene. But yeah, man, it's just, to me, they don't like miss a beat. Like the moment the episode starts, they mean business because they're readying for this battle. So really, what they're doing is they're laying the foundation here, and just the whole time you're just like, the moment the other shoe drops, like there's no coming back. And so them doing all these preparations, I was just on the edge of my seat the whole time, and I'm like, oh shit, just how bad is this going to be? Just how graphic is this going to be? And yeah, it was cool seeing her again. Like just this whole assemblage of people that we've come to know for 6 seasons. Actually no, 8 seasons. Excuse me, 8 seasons. Just been absolutely insane, man. Absolutely insane.
It's kind of crazy because I kind of expected Melisandre to die saving Arya, or at least saving a young girl as a way to kind of repent for her burning of Shireen. So I was kind of surprised to see her make it through the entire episode and then die of her own volition. I was like, wow, we're really just doing this. So, because I still but even with Melisandre helping to win this battle, or contributing a little, which ended up feeling very futile for the most part, she still felt more like a villain than a hero to me. She still felt more antagonist than protagonist to me, and her kind of getting almost like a redemption story. I don't know. It didn't really feel right to me. I feel like her redemption should have been her saving the life of a young girl to make up for what she did to Shireen, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because the things that she did, when she had Stannis' ear, she made a lot of transgressions. I mean, I would almost put her as worse than Theon, and I feel like Theon went through a lot more than she did.
Yeah,
which we'll talk about that later.
Yeah,
but
I mean, Theon took advantage of like a weakened situation for a family that had already been kind of beaten into the dirt, and like he was kind of abusive to Bran-ish, but he was never really like horrible to Bran, and like he did kill Sir Roderick and Maester. I forget his name. Was it Maester Ilyn? No, that was Ilyn Payne. Maester. I forget what the Winterfell's Maester was that he killed. Guy with the white beard. But Melisandre did so much more, so much worse. And like you said, she didn't have to go through a fraction of the shit that Theon had to go through.
Nah, man, nah. The roads to quote unquote redemption were, quite different.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. Whew.
All right. So then the Dothraki charging into the night, and next thing you know, we see some of their flaming swords, which we're seeing this from the perspective of Davos and Melisandre, who are standing up on the castle wall. So from our perspective, we see all of these lights that are representative of the flaming swords just kind of be extinguished one after the other. And really, I shouldn't even say one after the other, but like dozens at a time, it seemed like they were just not staying lit. And eventually everything kind of goes silent. And that's bad because Dothraki are loud. Like they're called Dothraki screamers for a reason. Then when they charge into the battle, they are making themselves known. They're screaming, they're howling, they're hooting and hollering. And when everything goes silent, you just know that it's over. They fucking lost. Like the entire Khalasar lost. And then we start to see some people make their way back, but you can clearly tell that it's retreat more than anything. So like this entire thing, like they just faded into the night. We don't know exactly what happened, but we're assuming that they're pretty much all dead. We see some of them coming back, and then it happens. This massive army of fucking whites are just charging. Jon tells Daenerys, hey, the Night King is coming, but she replies, well, the dead are already here. We just see this onslaught of these whites coming out, and like our main characters are in the front lines, and like that's kind of weird because I feel like the people on the front lines are the most likely to die, and yet the main characters that were in the front lines here all survived. At least survived this part of the battle where they should have died. Like it was, Eric and Jorah and Brienne and Jaime and Tormund and Sandor. They all lived through this part of the battle, even if a couple of them died by the end of the episode, which is weird because like they're on the front line and you would totally expect them, having been on the front line, to be like the first ones to die. But no, plot armor, right? Anyway, so then we do see Brienne get taken down to the ground, but Jaime does his best to save her. And when he kind of goes to help her, we see flames from the dragons. So Jon and Daenerys are on the dragons. They are lighting everything the fuck up. This is a beautiful scene, very neat scene. But then Jon starts heading for a forest, and we see this big old wave of like cold fog blow in. And then Arya tells Sansa to get down into the crypts and hands her a dagger. I'm pretty sure it was just like your standard dragon glass dagger that pretty much everyone had. And Sansa's just like, I don't know what to do with this. And Arya tells her what Jon told her in season 1, episode 1, stick him with the pointy end. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, dude, just to kind of work through everything that you were saying, I mean, just the opening of the Dothraki with the torches like charging in, and then that just all being extinguished by darkness. Like, what a fucking tone setter. The contrast of light and darkness just enveloping that light, and then the horses coming out of that darkness just utterly petrified. Like, if that doesn't make your blood run cold, I don't know what does. Because like I was looking at that and I was like, holy fuck. That was intense. And that again was in the very early parts of the episode. So that didn't take long at all. I agree with you about the Jon and Daenerys scene, them lighting everything. That was a gorgeous scene. And yeah, man, just totally gripped. And really the thing is, like, the scope of this battle, like they make it look, and it is just so huge. And right from the gate, like the Dothraki were almost like appetizers, they got taken care of like that. And I think too, if you've been a long watcher of this series, it's even more impressive in a way because you know that the Dothraki are like a warrior people. Like they live for fighting and conquest, and they got taken care of like they were nothing. So I think just like the symbolism and just like what that was representative of was just so well done, and again made my blood run cold. So great shit, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. Paul mentioned in chat that the Winterfell Maester that I was forgetting is Maester Luwin, so thank you for that, Paul. So anyway, then we get, I'm gonna end up losing track of where I am here. Then we get to see Theon for the first time chilling with Bran near the Godswood, and then the fog kind of rolls in on them too. Cut back out, we see Jorah doing all kinds of killing, but his horse gets taken down. Then Ed saves Samwell's life, but dies for it. So that's our first confirmed, I guess, that Khal, what was his name again? Khal Kono, the Khal of the Dothraki that were in this episode. He was probably the first confirmed death, considering he was a part of that massive group of Dothraki that charged in and all died almost.
Yeah.
Probably safe to assume he was the first death. But Ed was the second confirmed death. And then Sam manages to escape. We see Sansa down in the crypts with everyone else, including Tyrion. We've got Varys, we've got Gilly, all kinds of people down in the crypts. We've got Jon and Daenerys flying on the dragons through this intense fog, but they end up running into each other. They recover, though, and they end up flying side by side. We see Tormund and Brienne shouting at everyone to fall back, fall back, fall back. Lyanna Mormont has her people open the gate. Grey Worm tells his Unsullied to protect the retreat. This was like, there were a lot of points in this episode where I was just like, God, this is too dark. I can't see anything. But this was, to me, the first point where it really bothered me. And I was just like, God, I wish I could see literally anything at this point. But yeah, so I'm hoping, like, it would be really nice if just like a gamma corrected version of this episode got put out on the internet somehow or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Jon lands Rhaegal on one of the castle walls, which was a really cool vision to see. And then we see Brienne and Jaime directing traffic to get everybody inside the walls as efficiently as they possibly can. Arya nails a white with a flaming arrow right near Sandor. So it's like, holy shit, not only did she not hit him, which, he was on her list at one point, but she saved his life on purpose. It was awesome. Grey Worm starts shouting to light the trench, but we see Davos signaling with these torches for Dany and or Jon to the trench because they're supposed to do it with the dragons, but they're both caught up in this fog and they can't see the signal. So like Grey Worm is freaking out and he pulls the drawbridge, even though almost all of his Unsullied boys are outside of the trench. So he kind of fucks his own guys over for the sake of protecting everyone inside of the trench. They try lighting the trenches, but they can't. They can't do it. They tried doing the flaming arrows to do it, and they just kept getting put out as soon as they hit the wood. But then Grey Worm sees Melisandre, and we got Grey Worm kicking ass and big old like battles going on. But then Melisandre uses her magic to light the trenches in what was a really intense moment, with her seemingly casting a spell over and over again until it finally worked and ended up killing the white was literally headed for her face.
Yeah. Oh my God, dude. I really don't have much to say here because again, it was just like a lot of action that just was just like didn't stop and was constantly in your face. Yeah. But yeah, man, I loved it. Again, they very rarely let up on the intensity to me. And even when you could argue that they did, like it just was still like this specter that loomed over everything the entire episode. Fucking nuts, man. So yeah, what came after this?
After this, we had Sandor seemingly leaving the battlefield. It's like the trench gets lit on fire, and he's immediately trying to bounce. And we see a really nice little moment between Tyrion and Sansa down in the crypts, where they kind of bond a little bit, but she says it would never work between them. And he's just like, "Oh, why do you say that?" And she said, "Well, because of your divided loyalties between me and, I forget what she calls Daenerys, but she has the Dragon Queen."
Yeah, the Dragon Queen, yeah.
So I thought that was interesting, which kind of leads me to believe maybe Tyrion will be a turncoat one more time in his life. Maybe he'll betray Daenerys in favor of Sansa's hand in marriage and maybe them ruling the Seven Kingdoms together, which is what I've been predicting for a while now. But then we see Theon trying to apologize to Bran for everything that he's done, but Bran is just all like three-eyed raven now. He's not even really Bran, and he's just like, "You're here now because of what you did. You don't have to apologize." And then he wargs into a raven flock and sees the Night King on Viserion, so it's like confirmation that he is here. And we see whites start walking into the trench, and like, it's one of those things where at first glance, it's like, oh, well, they're stupid. They're killing themselves. But then it's like, oh, shit, they're not doing this because they're stupid. They're doing this because they're actually really fucking smart, but they're also expendable. And they're just walking over each other, basically, and creating this fleshy bridge of nasty dead bodies through the trench so that the rest of the whites can get through the trench. And then there was like another big moment where Jon sees Viserion with the Night King and follows him on Rhaegal. And I'm just thinking at this point, like, dude, you are so being trapped right now. But yeah, the whites are through the trenches. They start climbing up the walls of Winterfell, like World War Z style, like what we saw in that movie.
Yeah.
Top of each other, making a fleshy ladder to climb up with. It's insanity. Samwell is getting in on the white killing action, everything up on the wall. They start getting through, though. And Brienne actually saves Jaime, and then, of course, Jaime saves Brienne, and they're just having each other's backs up on the wall. Jorah actually saves Samwell at some point. The whites start impaling themselves on the blockades, but again, they're not doing it because they're stupid. They're doing it as like a barrier for the rest of the whites to be able to get up and over. And once the whites all get past, the wall of Winterfell, like the literal like castle wall, they get in and they're just doing stuff. Like they're killing people. They're going after people. Arya was up on one of the castle walls, kicking ass with that new weapon that Gendry made for her, that spear that was sick. Sandor still freaking out because of the fire. And then before we get to the next scene, which was the scene with the giant, the white giant, you have anything that you wanted to say about everything that I've been talking about so far, John?
No, man. Again, it's crazy. Like, what I really loved about this whole episode and these scenes that you're mentioning, like, war is not a glamorous thing. It's like, it's really fucking ugly and traumatizing. And a lot of this shit, man, was horrifying that we saw tonight. And so, yeah, I got on this. I was just like in awe of this whole episode. And again, it's hard to talk about in a more substantive way because it is just one grand battle scene. You know what I mean? So it's not like we can like unpack dialogue and this and that, because there was some, don't get me wrong, but really it was just finally this huge confrontation that's been built up for seasons. And yeah, just again, I say it was absolutely nuts, man. So what came after this?
The white giant. I don't know if it was 1-1. I hope it wasn't. It would be devastating if it was. I don't know how it would have been, because 1-1 died in Winterfell, and obviously this giant wasn't in Winterfell. It was coming from the north. But yeah, the white giant shows up, and then we go over and we see Beric trying to get Sandor to help. Arya still kicking ass, and Beric is just like, yeah, well, Sandor was talking about how like, oh, we can't win this. This is, we're trying to beat the dead. We can't win. And then they both see Arya and Beric's just like, yeah, well, tell her that. Then we see Lyanna, and she charges at the white giant, and it grabs her and it crushes her, and then it goes to pull her close to its face like it's going to bite her head off or eat her or something, and she stabs it right in the fucking eye with the dragon glass that she was holding. So this was like a double kill. This was like it killed her, but before she fully died, she killed him back.
Now, this is where I'll have a bit more to say. One, I was pleading with anybody to just throw Sandor in the fire. God fucking damn it. But really, really was annoyed by his bitch ass, and I was glad that he got some sense taught into, because Arya and Lyanna were fighting for their fucking lives. And as somebody that's watched this show from the beginning, I know you guys know I've talked about like favorite characters, Arya, Tyrion. I think Theon's really worked his way up there, especially after tonight, which we'll get to. But if we're talking about short-term characters or like minor characters that would only make a few appearances here and there, Lyanna, I think, is my absolute fucking favorite. Yeah. This girl was a badass from the first fucking scene she was a part of. Yeah. And like, I love, because like, dude, here's the thing too. I feel like in recent years, media's gotten better at this, but I'm a product of the 90s, and you pretty much are too. And like how kids used to be portrayed back then, it was always like so fucking cringe and like whatever. They take her and her character very seriously. And I've always admired that about this show. Like, even if you look back at the last episode we covered last week with the little girl, like in the soup procession almost. And she's like, oh, which way do I go? I want to fight. Like, it's endearing and it's sweet. And, I like that. So that was good. But then on the opposite end, you've got Lyanna that's like, oh, no, you don't understand. I am fighting. This wasn't a fucking request. I'm going to fucking kill some White Walkers. And she just goes out. Like, I've been following the hashtag. And this was, by the way, before I forget, this was the part that made me emotional. Because she's just charging. You could see the fatigue on her face. And she knows, like, death is inevitable. And you hear just the bones crack and and again, like, the sounds and everything. Just the overall production of this episode was a fucking masterpiece. Yeah. And you can see, like, the light fade from her eyes and the giants going. And again, like you, I thought it was going to bite her head off or what. And just right in the fucking eye. One last shank to take him down, and I lose my shit. Most badass character, let me qualify, most badass minor character in this fucking show, and it is not even close. I have seen so many people be like, Lyanna is my queen of the north, don't at me, and just this girl just getting showered with praise. And the actress that played her, great fucking job. Like, yeah. I love, like, I think between her, dude, and the Stranger Things kids, like, we're finally starting to get the finger on the pulse. Like, no, not all children are like bratty or annoying, even though I would say most are. Some really, really can, be mature and complex and dare I say, even badass. And I love that Lyanna died on the battlefield, because from the first scene she was in, you knew that was the only appropriate way for her to go out. Yeah. And it was, I think this is actually one of my favorite scenes in the whole episode, if you want my truth on it. I thought this was powerful. It moved me. And to know that a minor character could do that, because she just had such presence and such a charisma with every fucking scene. I popped for this. This was like the mark out for me. Well, I mean, this and some of the later scenes towards the end. But again, we'll get to those. This was fucking great, dude. So I just had to say my piece about this. Lyanna Mormont, I bow to you always, our queen of the north. So yeah, great shit, man. Great shit.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, man. So we see all that, and then we see the Night King getting chased by Jon and Daenerys, and they get led into a big ass opening where there are no clouds, and the Night King comes up from underneath them with a blue flame shot from Viserion. They head down where they expect the Night King to be, and we cut back to Arya, who's bloodied up, running through the halls. She ends up in like almost like a library-ish area where there are whites all around her, and this was like one of the most intense scenes in this episode because she's bleeding, and there are just so many whites around, and she tosses a book as a way to distract them all so that she can escape in the opposite direction. And it was only in the moment that she threw the book that really kind of revealed to me how many whites there were around her, because I thought it was like 2 or 3. And then
Right.
she look, and it's like, holy shit, there's got to be like 8, 9, maybe even double digits. And
Yeah.
she slowly, quietly closes the door behind her, but then the fucking whites burst through it. Apparently, they somehow knew she was there. They're chasing her. She's freaking out and running away. And then we get back into the crypts, and there's like this big commotion at the door. And I'm just like, oh my God, did Arya seriously just leave all these whites to the crypts? But guess that they just like it was just a bunch of random soldiers, and the whites killed them and moved on. But then we see Sandor and Beric walk in the halls, and they find Arya because they kind of like Arya and all these whites that were on her tail kind of burst through a door, and they save her. And Beric, as Sandor and Arya escape, Beric sacrifices himself, literally creates a human, his own body blockade in a hallway to prevent the whites, just to slow them down, really, so that Sandor and Arya can get away. And I thought that was like a truly beautiful moment in this episode. Like there were a lot of moments, but like Beric's sacrifice was beautiful to me.
And that's the word, man, sacrifice. We saw quite a bit of it in this episode. And you know what I loved about this? Like, especially now that we're unpacking it, with all the sacrifice that you see, it just further accentuates to me, again, as somebody that's been watching from the beginning, and I know like all of our viewers have as well, just the one person that wouldn't make any sacrifices, and that's fucking Cersei, who's like so comfortable and so far away from all of this and this fucking chaos, but you can see like they're just determined to stop this threat at any cost. And so any sacrifice in this episode, whether it was Lyanna just with her last gasp, taking out the giant, or the sacrifice here, it just really tugs at the fucking heartstrings, man. It's so powerful. I agree with you completely. Beautiful stuff.
Yeah. All right. Beric, third confirmed death of the episode. We've already talked about Cal. Oh, God damn it, I forgot his name again. Cal Kono. God, why do I have such a hard time remembering that name? Cal Kono. And then the second one, God, I forget who the second person to die was. Oh, Ed. Ed was dead too. So we've got Cal Kono, Ed, and now Beric. All guys that I fully expected to die here. And then Beric, we see Beric die, and then the room that Arya and Sandor are able to escape into and close the door and block the door with a big old heavy oak table happens to be where Melisandre is residing. Arya recognizes her, and then, we get the whites kind of starting to knock on the door. But, they recognize each other, and Melisandre says, "What do we say to the god of death?" And there was also like a cool moment here where Mel was just like, Beric served his purpose. Like she basically said, like that was what he was meant to do, was keep you alive. And
right.
Yeah. So what do we say to the god of death? And Arya replies, "Not today." Another great moment to me.
What a great callback, right?
Yeah. Throwback to Syrio Forel, man.
Yeah. I mean, I love that. I love that now, because especially too, it's so great because not only is it a callback to that scene, but you think about the Arya character, and back then she was training with a sword, and now like she's gotten so adept at one, like she's on the battlefield in the biggest battle of human existence in this world. So like I just love that. I just definitely have a little smirk on my face hearing that. I even said it with them, like, "Not today." So yep. Good shit.
And I forgot about this as far as confirmed deaths go. It wasn't confirmed until the dead were brought back by the Night King later in the episode, but Lyanna ended up dying from what the giant did to her as well. So
right.
So that's 4 people: Kono, Ed, Lyanna, and Beric, as Paul pointed out in chat. So then Theon and co are kind of finally starting to get some whites on their asses, and they do a really great job of holding them back too. Then the Night King uses Viserion's blue flame to destroy one of the walls of Winterfell. Jon goes after the Night King with Rhaegal. Night King has another one of his ice spears, but then Daenerys shows up with Drogon, knocks the Night King off of Viserion. Something happened to Rhaegal in this whole exchange. Jon, the dragon that Jon was riding, I don't know what. All I know is that Rhaegal ended up on the ground. Jon Snow ended up on the ground. I didn't see Rhaegal for the rest of the episode, but Jon was on the ground at this point, and he wasn't flying in a dragon anymore. And then Daenerys sees the Night King, and he's just standing there, and she calls for Dracarys, which, you know, is what she says to get her dragons to spit flame. And Drogon just destroys the Night King, just blazes his ass up. And it seems to get the job done, but it didn't actually get the job done. He was still just standing there, and he even fucking smiles. Like the goddamn Night King smiles. And then he grabs his ice spear, and Daenerys, on her way out, kind of has to bob and weave a little bit. The Night King ends up missing with that spear. But then, you know, we get this kind of intense moment where it seems like we're going to get a one-on-one battle between Jon and the Night King. But Night King raises all the dead in and around Winterfell. And this was like the moment where it felt like a defeat, right? Because this was like that moment where it was just like, holy fuck. Like, as if the army of the dead wasn't big enough already. Now all the people who were killed by members of the army of the dead, as well as all of the members of the army of the dead that were still around and kicking, they got rose back. They got brought back from the dead. And it's like he just completely restocked his army without any problems. And it was so like, this was like that gut punch, man. This is like, God, like we lost. Like this is it. We can't come back from this.
And you know what, dude? Like I have to confess here, I had a brain fart because I forgot that they could do this. So then when they did, I'm like, oh, fuck. It's kind of like when you watch TVZ and you forget for a second that the villain has the property of regeneration, and you're like, oh God, the arc is over, finally. And then you see them start to reassemble, and you're like, God fucking damn it, why? And you just see that their numbers just grow. Like any body that they lost, like for any one soldier that they lost, they gain 2 more because of this ability. It's nuts. So like you, I agree. You look at this and you're like, well, how can they come back from this? Because now their dead have literally like turned, and they've turned against them. So yeah, man, it was tough to watch. It was horrifying to watch. So I completely agree. Crazy, man.
This was crazy. Yeah, like I said, this was the ultimate gut punch, because then like Jon was charging and he just got stopped in his tracks because there was just too much space in between him and the Night King. And this is also the point where we see Lyanna get raised, so we know that she was dead. So Lyanna ends up a white, and the Night King just kind of continues into Winterfell, and he's got all of his White Walkers behind him with him. And then like the big reveal, like I don't know if the biggest reveal, but definitely a huge reveal, and I would argue the biggest reveal of this episode. The dead Starks in the crypts come back to life, and they start punching their ways out of their crypts, out of their, you know, whatever you want to call them, tombs, I don't fucking know. And they start attacking the people that were down in the crypts. And I don't know if Gilly died, but I'm pretty sure I saw her getting dragged by one of the Stark Whites.
Yeah, that was tough to watch too. Can I just say, like,
Yeah.
Seeing that, I was like, well, I'm sufficiently uncomfortable. So yeah, that was probably one of the toughest scenes for me to watch, man. That was not pretty at all.
Yeah.
Oof.
So yeah, that was rough to watch. Then we go back to Theon's little group, and they're doing a pretty good job of holding back the dead for a period of time. And we also see Jon doing his damnedest to fight off everyone that just got raised around him. And we see Drogon, Dany with Drogon, saving Jon because he was about to get kind of swallowed up by the dead, and she, you know, lands and does the fire thing with Drogon and takes care of the whites. But by landing, she also left herself, or at least left Drogon open to whites just crawling up his tail and crawling onto his back. And Daenerys gets shaken off of Drogon, and Drogon just kind of flies off to try and shake the rest of the whites that are on him off. And then we see Jorah save Daenerys' life again from all the whites. And, he's got his, he's got the Tarly family Valyrian seal sword that he's been using the entire battle. Dany ends up grabbing one of the dragon glass blades that were on one of the dead bodies just laying around. Then we see Jon get through a gate inside of Winterfell and close it behind him to keep all the dead from getting to him. We see Theon and the group that he's with get overrun by the walkers. Well, we see Sansa and Tyrion hiding in the crypts. And they kind of have a little conversation where Sansa has, they don't even have a conversation. They just have like this moment where Sansa has this dagger, this glass dagger that Arya gave her. And it's implied. I thought it was going to be like she was going to kill herself and kill Tyrion. I thought that they were both going to end up getting killed, intentionally, just like we don't want to live through this. But they end up just kind of escaping and going out to protect all the other people. We see Jon continuing his onslaught. Next thing you know, fucking Viserion shows up and starts lighting everything up with his blue flames, like losing his shit. Like he's going crazy. Theon kicking ass. Bran, like, I don't know what the hell Bran was doing this entire episode, but he spent like a good 70% of this episode working something. And it obviously wasn't the Raven the entire time. So I really have no clue what he was doing here. But then, we see the Night King and his White Walker generals in Winterfell. Jorah ends up getting hurt really bad. The Night King went for Bran with his generals, the White Walkers. They show up near the Godswood. Bran tells Theon, "You're a good man, thank you." Theon, with a tear in his eye, charges towards the Night King, gets parried and killed by the Night King. And then, John, do you want to talk about what's happened next, or do you want to talk about what's happened so far before?
Okay. Well, before we talk about what happens next, because I know that's probably what everybody's here for, because it was fucking excellent. I just want to push pause real quick, right? And just give the fucking respect to Theon Greyjoy here.
Yeah.
Like, dude, you and I watch a shit ton of TV. Like, I mean, obviously on the internet, but we've watched like a lot of shows over the years with us being friends. I don't know if I've ever seen a better redemption arc than that of Theon Greyjoy. Because, like, he fucking earned that shit. Sometimes I feel like in shows redemption comes too easy. But, like, Theon begins his penance, like, for trying to, take Winterfell and House Stark. Like, he begins paying it almost immediately at the hands of Ramsay Bolton. And then, like, just because you get out of trauma doesn't mean, like, you immediately revert back to your old self. Like, it took time for him to recover. And then when he recovers, like, he's of this mindset of, I want to make things right. And he goes and he serves the same people in the same house that he tried to take only a few seasons prior. And he ends up dying for that house. Like, if that's not a full circle fucking redemption story, I do not know what is. Especially because I want to mention two things too. One, Theon's bitterness towards the Starks early on, which is part of why he perpetrated that plan to begin with. He always felt like kind of jaded by the Stark family. So, to kind of reconcile with them, Sansa embracing him and everything, and then again, him fighting for them. And then, like you said, like, he wasn't overly malicious to Bran, but he did exhibit cruelty towards him. So then for Bran, even though he is the three-eyed raven now, to look at him and say, you're a good man, that still hit Theon hard because he still sees Bran in there. So,
well, not only does he see Bran in there, but even if he does recognize Bran as this like all-seeing three-eyed raven, it's like, dude, like if you've seen everything that everyone's done in their lives ever, and you still come out of the other end of seeing all that shit thinking that I'm a good man, I must be a good fucking man.
Yeah, that dude, that's the soundbite right there. I really, after you saying that, I got nothing else to say. If you have anything else you want to add about, like, Theon, because I just wanted to take a moment and really appreciate this fucking arc. I thought it was so well done. But if you've got nothing else to say, we can get to the moment of the episode. Oh yeah, and by the way, I just wanted to actually field something to you before we do that. Pickiest of nits. I felt like the score at times was a bit overused. Like I will say personally, like when the Night King was walking towards the three-eyed raven, I would have almost liked the quiet to just be there. I'm sure that the soundtrack is going to be like downloaded by so many people and it's going to just go down as one of those epic scores in Game of Thrones, with the piano and everything else. It's not that it was a bad score. It's actually quite nice. I just felt like it was a bit overused in scenes that I feel like could have benefited a bit from quiet. So I don't know if you're kind of with me on that. Again, I say it's the pickiest of nits, but that was kind of something that got to me a little bit. But yeah, other than that, man, great fucking scene, great fucking moment, especially for Theon. Amazing stuff.
Yeah. Well, I guess we can get to the big moment now because the Night King slowly approaches Bran and he kind of has like a shit smirk on his face. And Bran just kind of looks at him. And next thing you know, here she comes. Fucking Arya charges out of nowhere. We even see one of the White Walkers kind of look at her like out of the corner of his eye. She charges, she jumps through the air with that cat's paw dagger that Bran gave her in season 7 in her left hand and tries stabbing down into the Night King, but he turns around and grabs her by the throat. So what does she do? The same fucking move that she did when she was sparring with Brienne. She drops that dagger into her right hand and comes up through the chest, and the king fucking explodes into a million shards of ice, and so do the rest of the White Walkers, and all of the whites just collapse. That's it. It's fucking over. That's it. Arya just won the war for the dawn. The fucking Battle of Winterfell is over because Arya Stark destroyed everyone. Like, she just killed the Night King, and that was the domino effect.
Yeah, there's so much to say about this. One, most immediately with the scene itself, Arya's a fucking badass. That's why she's my fucking fave right there. Loved her from season 1, and as a longtime Arya fan, what a fucking payoff. Because I actually felt when he throttled her by the throat, I felt my heart in mine. Because I'm like, no, they are not going to kill her. Don't do this to me. Like, I can pretty much take any other loss. But again, Arya and Tyrion have been my faves from season 1. So I'm like, please don't take her from me. And I would even put Arya above Tyrion. So I'm like, please do not take her from me. And then when she shanks him, I'm like, fuck yeah, kill him. And they all explode. But here's the thing, too, I want to mention, like, on a more meta level with the show. Even if we just look at this season in isolation from everything else and like outside the buildup, the Night King was dealt with in 3 episodes in this one season. And now that leaves the only really big threat as Cersei for the other 3 episodes. But the Night King was handled before Cersei, which, if you think about it in that way, that's kind of the show implying that Cersei's a bigger threat in my mind than the Night King, which
I'm not
fucking
super happy about that. Yeah.
Like, I mean, but you get what I'm saying, though, right? Because it's like,
oh, dude, I totally see what you're saying, and I agree with you. I'm just not stoked about it. Like, I understand how the show is gonna, like, I know that this sounds dumb because it makes it seem like I was rooting for the villain, which obviously I wasn't. But how are you gonna do the Night King dirty like this? That it's an awesome kill for Arya, and that, like, yeah, she's a badass. But Arya's killed fucking everyone. You just put the Night King on the same level as fucking Meryn Trant. Like, what the hell, man? Like,
yeah, I mean,
it was supposed to be the big bad of the series. We saw
of the series, yeah.
We saw the White Walkers before we saw any of the other named characters we know of right now. The first scene of the series was those 3 random Night's Watch dudes. One of them was a Royce. I don't remember his first name. Up north of the wall, and they're running into White Walkers. We saw White Walkers before we were introduced to the Starks, before we were introduced to the Lannisters, anything. We saw the White Walkers before it all. And the White Walkers are basically like this looming threat throughout the entire series. And Arya just completely ends that threat with one stab of a knife.
Yeah, which, I mean, granted, to the show's credit, they do build up Dragon Glass as a weapon. So we know, like, within the universe, the mechanics all play out. So it's not like, a Deus Ex Machina or anything like that, or just something out of fucking nowhere. You know what I mean? So I get that. It's just surprising to me that, like, when you structure a show and you have your antagonists, if one antagonist outlives the other, then the natural thing that's being implied is this is the greater antagonist. And, like, here's my thing. That battle was fucking epic. Like, that episode was an experience. Even if you're not a Game of Thrones fan, I think if you looked at this episode as a standalone, and again, just see the scope of it and the scenery and just everything that we've been talking about for this whole time, you know, it's a magnificent piece of television. My question is, if you're leaving Cersei alive, how the fuck do you plan to top it? Because, like, if she's a bigger threat than the Night King, what is she packing that's going to make me believe? Yeah, I mean, already, obviously, we both want her to die. We've said that before on this show. But, like, what is she bringing that is such a grave fucking threat that she actually outlived the fucking Night King? That's what I want to know. That's, yeah, like, I just, when I really stopped pondering, I'm like, wow, that is some shit right there. So yeah, man, I mean, and that's it really. They all like evaporate in a dust. You see the bodies. Well, actually, there is one more thing. Because did you talk about Ser Jorah and fucking Daenerys and that whole thing? Like her just kind of crying over his thing. We haven't gotten to that yet, right?
No, yeah, not yet.
Not yet. So yeah, I mean, obviously that happens too. But yeah, Arya, real fucking MVP. I've been seeing a lot of people like on Twitter saying like women stole this episode, and goddamn right they did. Like Lyanna, you know, Brienne did her thing. Fucking Arya, obviously, with the epic kill. Sansa and Tyrion, you know, that was a great moment. Yeah, man, this episode, Jesus. I almost like want to watch it again in a few days. Like just give myself a bit of a reprieve and then watch it again because I feel like this is definitely something with how massive it is. You can't conceivably appreciate everything the first run through. So yeah, just great stuff. But I totally get your reservations about like the Night King dying when he was the series antagonist, not just like some isolated villain of the season like you would see on a show like Arrow or something. Like, no, he was like a focal point of the whole series. So like, where do you go from here? And I mean, obviously Cersei and all that, but like, how do you match what we've just seen tonight? I don't know if you can. So
yeah, I'm also like, I don't know. I don't know, man. I'm not. There's a lot of stuff about what happened tonight that I am happy about, and mostly just like the fact that a lot of the characters that I wanted to survive survived. Like, you know, Jamie, Tormund, Brienne. Lots of people like either had ambiguous endings where it's safe to assume they lived, or they just explicitly lived, and it makes me happy to see that. But like, I don't know, man. I feel like the Night King got kind of swept under the rug a little too quickly, and I feel like I don't know. I almost feel like they're giving Cersei too much, if that makes sense.
yeah, I could understand that. You gotta wonder too, because like the show has far and away outpaced the books. If like I don't know, because you know so many things are done like by algorithms and data today. You gotta wonder if like Cersei was a really popular character among the fandom, and they just decided to like reposition her. Because you know it's happened before in shows. Like for example, Breaking Bad. Jesse was supposed to die in the first season. He was supposed to die in the first season finale, but he became such a beloved character that he lived all the way to the series finale. I mean, spoilers, but if you guys haven't seen it by now, what the fuck? You know, so maybe it's the same way with Cersei. Maybe the plan was one thing, but maybe she just developed such a fandom they decided to make her the ultimate big bad. Not saying I agree with it. I'm just kind of making conjecture about like how we could have gotten here when the Night King so clearly seemed to be the threat for the fucking series. So yeah, man, I'm right there with you. I'm kind of vexed by it, but we'll see what they do with it. They got 3 episodes left, and after that heavy hitter, like, good luck. Good. I'm very curious now what the series finale is going to be because I don't know if anything can touch this, man. This was nuts. This is fucking crazy.
Yeah. Man. All right. Well, that's about it. I mean, the closing scene was just Jorah's death, Dany being devastated, and then Melisandre leaving Winterfell, taking off her necklace and collapsing dead. That was the entire ending after the death of the Night King.
Yeah, and Ser Jorah, you know, gave his and I don't know how this is going to mess up Daenerys, you know, because he's been loyal to her from the very beginning. So she lost like one of her most loyal soldiers easily in this whole thing. And I don't know how that's going to change her psychologically, compounded by the Jon news, that he told her right before everything went down. And I don't know, maybe it's a bad thing that he's going to live to reap the consequences of it. I don't fucking know. Because we got to remember now, just to kind of put everything together and stitch everything together. Daenerys told Sansa what happens after is I come for the Iron Throne. Sansa's already made it clear that's not fucking happening. We're not like bending the knee to anybody again after everything we've been through. The dust is going to settle. I mean, there may be like the first few minutes of the next episode, maybe like partying and relief and like honoring your dead and like that whole thing, right? Because of the euphoria and the adrenaline and everything. Once that wears off, though, we go right back to pragmatics and we go right back to politics, and it is going to be cutthroat and it is going to be ugly and it is going to be fucking nasty. So I'm really curious how everything's going to be navigated. And you know who really does come out as the winner here is Cersei. She was so far away from this battle. And then if Daenerys and Sansa, if that infighting, now that the external threat has been dealt with, intensifies, which you have to imagine it will, who's going to reap the whirlwind? The woman fucking miles and miles away from all of it. So, like, yeah, man, I know there have been some people saying that, like, Cersei, they feel like she's going to end up on top. Obviously, you and I think differently from certain content we've watched and certain things that we've pondered. But I can understand where they're coming from when you're dealing with fucking stupid protagonists like this. I'm amazed they were able to keep their shit together. I'll tell you what I was really amazed by, dude. I was actually amazed that Daenerys actually did fight alongside these people and she didn't try and kill Jon. Because I honestly thought, like, this bitch is so fucking crazy. She's going to try and use all this chaos to her advantage. But no.
Yeah, I thought that, like, when she came in while Jon had Rhaegar, like, biting Viserion at the face and at the neck, I thought that Daenerys coming in, like, I thought that she knocked Jon off of Rhaegar on purpose.
Yeah, I did too. Like, I really thought she was going to do that sick, twisted shit. Like, and neither one of us really thought much of her, given her ambitions and everything. I thought she was going to sell him out the first fucking chance she got. Yeah. So that was a pleasant surprise. Actually stood her ground and fucking fought. But now, now I really can't expect much good from her when she is declared from the jump. That throne is mine. Everybody get fucked, eat shit. Khaleesi is coming to Westeros kind of thing. So We'll see how it all plays out next week.
Man, what a fucking episode. That was crazy. So as far as I know, apparently Ghost and both dragons, so Drogon and Rhaegar, were in the preview for episode 4. So none of them died. I guess Tormund, Grey Worm, Brienne, and Jaime all survived. Samwell as well, I'm pretty sure still survived. Not sure about Jaime, or not Gilly. Not sure about Gilly and Little Sam. I'm not sure about them. It seems like they probably survived, but I don't know. We're pretty confident Tyrion and Sansa and Varys and that whole crew from the crypt survived. I'm guessing it was only unnamed characters that died down there. So, like, as far as like a kill count, let's go back to the beginning. We've got Cal Kono, we've got Beric, we've got Lyanna. Let's see, we've got Ed died saving Sam. We've got Theon, and I want to say that's Jorah, and of course the Night King. So seven named characters died in this episode.
Not as many as I thought, man.
No, really, yeah, like it's funny because we're at that point where people are just like, oh shit, this is going to be like the Red Wedding. So many people that we care about are going to die, but nah. Oh yeah, Melisandre also died at the very end. So that's 8. But like, all the people that died, I felt like were people that we expected to die, that were basically expendable, that like their stories felt relatively complete. Like, sure, Jorah would have been cool to see him end up with Daenerys, but I think we all know what's happening with her, and she's probably pregnant with Jon's child anyway. So I don't know. I feel like there weren't really any, like, it was anywhere close to Red Wedding levels of devastation.
In fact, I don't know if you can look this up just right away, but what was the body count for the Red Wedding relative to this?
I have no clue. I'm not even going to bother trying to look that up, man.
Let me see if I can look it up real quick. Because like I would just look up Red Wedding body count. Because yeah, like this is actually, considering again the scope and the scale of this battle, like you would have thought that the body count would have been massive Like I expected wide scale death. But yeah, it was actually pretty tame, all things considered. It doesn't diminish from the impact of the power of the episode. I still quite enjoyed it. Let's see. Casualties here. Just people with actual names. Queen deleted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can already tell you, yeah, it's higher. It's higher. So Red Wedding actually had a higher count than this. But yeah, it was still a
Yeah,
great
I mean, the thing is, I mean, I'm sure there were other people that died that had names that we just didn't think about. So I don't know. We'll call, as far as like named characters, we'll call it a draw. But nobody was rooting for anybody that died in tonight's episode to be the literal king or queen of Westeros. And I'm pretty sure there were a lot of people behind Rob when he got killed.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
So yeah, I'm you know, I think really this is going to sound awful because of all of the human lives that were lost, but I feel like the biggest loss that we had in tonight's episode was Winterfell itself.
Yeah, yeah,
Like this
definitely.
big, beautiful castle with these massive wall, and like it's downright destroyed. Like there's no, I think it's unsalvageable at this point. If I had to guess, like I have a hard time believing they're going to be able to continue using this castle as a home. You know what I mean?
For sure, dude. Yeah, I completely agree with you. It utter devastation to say the fucking least. Insanity. Just again, really again shows you the horror, the terror, and just the overall just bedlam of warfare. And yeah, one group was left standing, and that was humans. Go humans! But man, did it come at a heavy fucking price. So yeah, man, that's all I got to say about this episode. Again, not much substantive commentary on unpacking, given that it was really just one giant battle scene. But fuck, man, they did it so well, so well. This when the series is done, this is gonna go down as one of my series favorite episodes. For sure, like
You
without
think
question.
so? I don't know. I don't know if I'll be able to say that honestly. I wanted to. I was really excited about tonight, but I just felt kind of like this vague sense of underwhelmed when the episode ended. It's just like, man, there was just so much destruction, and Arya ended it all with one knife swipe. It's like, wow.
Yeah, but again, like I already explained like why I can forgive it because the mechanics and everything of the Dragon Glass were explained and previously established. So it's not like it like felt out of nowhere. And then they did like kind of stitch it into the fabric of their universe. But I can understand why though, because this guy that's like leading this horde of creatures that are just like wiping out humanity systematically. And you figure, like, with his presence and everything that he gives off, he's supposed to be the toughest one. And Arya was just able to get close enough to kill him, which, by the way, that's another kind of subverted trope. Because we didn't talk about this yet, and I did want to mention this tonight. This was their plan, like using the three-eyed raven as bait and then getting close enough to stab him. And you know how I talked to you about, I think I might have even said something effective, and if I didn't, I will here, that in shows like that, the first plan always fucking fails. Like it's just never going to work. And essentially the first plan actually worked here. So way to subvert a trope, I guess, Game of Thrones. Like, goddamn, I didn't think this plan had any chance of working. And when Arya got throttled by the throat, I'm like, well, told you twice. And then she shanked him with the right. And I'm like, oh, well, joke's on me then. What the fuck? So yeah, just a very, very interesting episode again for me. I'll say it goes down to one of my favorites. I can understand though if people felt a bit let down because of the grandness of the threat just being taken down so easily. But you know, again, I can overlook it. I'm really see where my challenge is now is how are you going to build up Cersei for the remainder of this? Because there are 3 episodes left, and you took
I
out.
mean, I don't know, man. She's kind of shacking it up with Euron, so it seems like that's going to be like the new power couple. But I don't know how you can possibly make that duo come off as more of a threat than the fucking literal undead.
Yeah. I mean, give credit to a show in like an age where we are oversaturated with like zombie content, like undead content and shit. They're like, nah, humans are still the real MVPs of evil. So kudos to you, I guess, Game of Thrones. But yeah, man, that's really all I've got to say. That there's nothing more valuable or substantive that I could say about this episode that hasn't already been said either by you or I. So I'm just gonna put a pin in my side of things. If there's anything else you want to say or bring to the table, I mean, feel free. But I'm good.
Yeah, I'm not really in a position to add anything else either. So I think we can call it here, man. This is definitely our shortest review, but it makes sense because coming from a wrestling review background, a lot of the shows that we spend the least amount of time talking about are the ones with the most match time because there's only so much you can say about fights, and that applies here as well. This is pretty much one massive long fight scene, and even though there were a lot of things that happened, there wasn't really a whole ton of stuff that happened that we can talk about as far as like future implications, and if there is, then we're just not thinking of it. So I think I'm just gonna close it out now, unless you have any final thoughts that you wanted to get out before we close.
No, I just wanted to thank everybody for coming out for this. We'll see you next week. I really appreciated the viewership we got tonight. 6 likes and still 9 people watching. So if you haven't liked yet, please do so. We'd greatly appreciate it. So if you're here for Game of Thrones again, we'll see you next Sunday at 11. And if you're here for the wrestling stuff, because I know a lot of you here are here for both the Game of Thrones and wrestling stuff, we will see you again on Tuesday for our SmackDown Live reactions, where Kevin Owens will probably explain his actions on why he beat the ever-loving shit out of Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods. Should be a good time for everybody. So we'll see you then. And for now, I'm just going to hand it over to Ashton and take us home.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we hope you all enjoyed our review of tonight's episode of Game of Thrones. We hope you enjoyed the episode itself, of course. And we do also appreciate you for showing up. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like the video. You can subscribe to the channel if you're new. We do primarily cover wrestling, but we'll be finishing out season 8 of Game of Thrones, and we'll be covering it every Sunday at 11 p.m. Eastern time on the day of the episode's airing. So if you would like to stick around just for that, you can subscribe or don't subscribe, or however you want to do it. It's up to you. You can also click the bell icon, join the notification squad, and all of our social media is in the description of other videos. If you're interested in following us, it's pretty easy to find. We hope that you all enjoyed, though. We'll see our wrestling folks on Tuesday. But of course, remember, until then, to stay tuned.